Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And it's Jeremy from Tested.
Welcome back to Projections, where this week we're going to talk about a VR platform that I know we don't talk enough about, PSVR.
That's right. Yeah, it's not even on the table yet, but we do have one, and we look forward to the chance to use it, and we had 2 chances recently.
Yes, as VR enthusiasts may be well aware of, 2 games recently came out for PSVR that got a lot of attention, and we're going to add our voices to the choir, say that these are, at least in my opinion, fantastic VR experiences in general. The first is Astro Bot Rescue Mission. Now, back at E3, we went to the Sony booth, and you actually played one of these levels. We did an episode where you described it, and I wasn't convinced.
No, I remember saying this was actually pretty fun. Like, the original robots, these characters that they put in this game were from an earlier PlayStation experience that you got with the PSVR for free. And it was one of many games that you got to play with that, which is just a little robot platformer, ran around the world. In that game, they actually had a player 2 where you could sort of assist.
Yes.
So I was kind of expecting it to be an extension of that experience.
Asymmetrical, maybe some people are playing on the TV and one person's playing in the headset, but they streamlined it, took the idea of these really cute robots and made a full-fledged platformer.
It is a full-fledged game. Like, I don't know if there's a more full-fledged virtual reality experience to be had anywhere. This feels like a complete AAA platformer.
Now, in terms of platformers in VR, there have been a couple previous attempts, even on the PSVR platform. There's been, of course, Lucky's Tale on the Oculus side, one of the launch titles. You use the gamepad.
Yes.
Side-scroller, a little more like. And then Moss on PSVR, which very, very well done. Also third-person kind of action-adventure game.
Yeah.
Astro Bot, while third-person, feels like what VR would be, what Mario would be like in VR, what Super Mario would be.
Well, it's hard to compare to Moss. Moss has a lockdown camera, so that's a starting point that is completely different from either Lucky's Tale or this game.
It's more like Chronos in that sense.
Yes, yes, exactly. Whereas this game, the camera follows the player, but not in 3D space. It's more of like a one-dimensional movement, where the character, your robot, you're controlling with the gamepad,
DualShock controller,
runs around the world, and you can look in all directions, and sometimes you need to, and we'll probably get into that. But as it progresses through the level, which is always sort of linearly, your camera follows that direction, but it doesn't shift left or right. No. So unlike Lucky's Tale, it just goes in one direction.
Very smart design move, I think, both for comfort, but also for level design, because in that sense, you, not only is the little robot that you're controlling with the DualShock controller going through the world, but you as the god avatar, which has a physical form.
Which you don't even realize probably at first until you see a reflection of yourself in the world. You're actually a robot too.
You are traversing the world much like, almost like a Disney ride.
Right.
Like the world opens up to you, and not only does looking around open up visuals and gameplay mechanics, we're being a little coy about the details because we don't want to spoil a lot of the experience, but you learn about the world because you go into small spaces and big spaces, and those worlds are widely varied.
It's a game that encourages you to stop and look around in more ways than one. Like, part of the goal is not just to traverse and get through the level and collect a bunch of coins. You're also searching out 8 of your fellow compadres, like all of these other robots who are hidden throughout the world, sometimes in plain sight, sometimes not so much, but always off the beaten trail. And so you're looking left, you're looking right, looking behind you sometimes, and then you have to find out, well, how do I even get there? And that becomes the platforming exercise where you're walking around the world and jumping. There's a double jump mechanic where you jump once and you press it again, and these lasers come out of your feet for a couple seconds. And so that's a lot of fun. I did not find all of these guys. I found enough to progress, because you have to find a certain number in order to unlock the next world.
And in terms of the maps, there are 25 total maps split off into 5, I guess they call them worlds. Each world is 5 maps. The maps are very different from each other, not only aesthetically, but also just the way you move through. Some of them are a little more vertical, some of them thematically are different, but every one of the maps is designed with a capital D. Like, they put a lot of effort. They didn't just churn
Right.
out maps for the sake of maps. It is a catered and well-crafted
I don't
experience.
think there's a game in VR that I've played that made me smile more than this game because of the design that you mentioned. At the end of every level, if you watch the capture of some of my gameplay, you'll notice the camera's doing this because I'm just like saying, that was just so cool. Every level has that effect where it's so different from the last that it's novel and exciting.
And they one-up themselves within the level, even going through the first or second world, and there will be a demo at some point, a free-to-play demo for you to try this out if you don't want to buy the full game. I was like, how could they get more interesting? How could they, what other themes could they do? And they constantly just surprise you to the point where even by the time you get to the 5th set of worlds, you're learning new gameplay mechanics.
Well, you mentioned mechanics, and that's the thing, is that your character doesn't actually learn to do anything more, but you do. So part of the genius of this game is they maximize some of the best aspects of PSVR, which is to say the gamepad. Like, that is the one aspect that the PSVR has that no one else does. Right. Everyone else is doing 6-off controllers, which are, as we know, awesome. And they have the Move, but they do not compare to the PC solutions. But the gamepad itself can be 6-off tracked, and that actually works quite well. So your gamepad, which is represented in the space, plays a role throughout every level. Well, maybe not every level, but a good number of them. And you reach certain areas, boxes that you unlock, and then this box emerges before you. You take your gamepad in physical space and you place it into this mechanic, and it unlocks an ability.
And the ability can be firing pellets, it can be a grapple, it can be a flashlight, it can be all sorts of manner of things that are specific to the design of that world. It's not like you're pulling a roster of, I'm going to open up my grapple for this part. You are using it because they designed the experience. And there are moments of light bulb moments of how you're supposed to creatively use your presence in that world, your controller's ability, and the platforming of your character together to get past obstacles in ways that almost remind me of like Portal. Like, they just laid out the mechanics and then creatively integrated them for platforming. Yeah,
and as you said, they're not cumulative. So at the end of every level, you lose those abilities. And so they give you whatever you need to progress through that level. Also, your actual headset becomes something that takes agency in the space as well. Often you have to use your head to headbutt through a wall.
Knock soccer balls.
That's my favorite part, is this guy's like knocking a soccer ball at you. Occasionally he knocks the soccer ball at your little robot friend and you have to kick it back, but you get these big ones that come at your head, and then you get into this game of Pong, which is like a headbutt Pong. I wouldn't want to see myself playing this game because I'm sure it looked pretty silly, but it's a lot of fun to play.
And in some cases, you're playing a platformer, and this is what elevates it in the platforming world. You're playing the platforming aspects, getting your character to run around and jump and time and kill enemies at the same time as you're dodging things because the enemies are shooting at you and then trying to obscure your vision.
You can't ever be killed by hitting your head, but you can have your vision obscured. That's true.
There are also 5 bosses in the game. That's how it's structured. At the end of each of these sets, you play a boss. And even the bosses are really well crafted. They take advantage of the things you've learned, the mechanics you've learned in the past world, but also it really reminds me, I go back to that Mario analogy because I don't think any platformer since has really kind of just been so creative.
I think it's dangerous to say Mario because people think, okay, this is, and I've seen people online say this is the Mario 64 of VR. I think this is the closest we've gotten.
Okay.
This just makes me want to see Nintendo do VR.
Sony
more
Japan
than ever.
Studio has done it, I'm going to say.
Hey, power to them, because they are the ones who dove into VR along with the PC. And I'm really glad that they did. We heard hints that maybe Xbox would. We were fingers crossed that Switch might support something. But no, nothing does but Sony. So I'm glad that they've done this. And they certainly have a head start on the other console manufacturers. Nonetheless, when Miyamoto does a VR game, mark my words, that will be the Nintendo. That will be the Super Mario for VR.
Astro Bot, I think Rescue Mission is the high bar currently.
Yes, I agree.
For VR platformers.
I totally agree. I think it's a killer app for PSVR. I think this is absolutely the best game you can find on that platform.
And PlayStation does have a bundle now with both the PSVR headset, the camera, no Move controllers, but if you have a DualShock, you can play Moss and Astro Bot Rescue Mission in one package. So if you have a PS4 and you're thinking about buying a PSVR, I think that would be one to consider. Now, on the more aggressive side, there's also another bundle pack for a game that just came out at the end of August, Firewall 0 Hour.
That bundle comes with the peripheral.
Yeah, the PS Aim controller, and this is on the flip side, not a platformer, but a very hardcore shooter.
First-person shooter.
In PSVR, multiplayer only.
That's what I was going to say. We have seen first-person shooters before, but this is a Counter-Strike equivalent.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a Rainbow Six style game.
Totally.
Where it is you versus the enemy. And if you go online, you can do co-op 2 people against AIs, but that's just training. The AIs are absolutely stupid. It is hardly even fun beyond learning the mechanics of the game. So you're going to be playing against humans. And at first, I was like, I have played this game before, Norm. I have been playing this game for 20 years. Right.
But what does VR bring to it?
Once I had my first game-winning kill, now I'm hooked, and I want to get back in there. The actual using the PS Aim, I think, brings a lot to the experience because the aiming mechanic is not as simple as simply pointing the gun. You have to find the reticule and find the laser pointer inside that, and you're leaning around corners and you're crouching, and it's a blast.
And the PS Aim we've seen in the past with the games like Farpoint and even Arizona Sunshine, but here it takes that Rainbow Six and Counter-Strike-like gameplay, 4v4 attacker-defender with a simple objective in 9 maps to a whole new level because aiming really matters. And management of your weapons and ammo and your character classes all feeds into this tense, like games aren't long, like maybe 5 minutes long, the rounds.
Yes.
But it's very tense 5 minutes.
You're forced to first attack and then you defend, so it's constantly switching. You're a team of 4 versus 4. So, and it's permanent death. So if you can be knocked down and then you can be revived, but while you're knocked down, if they continue to shoot you, you are out for the game.
Sound matters a lot. This is things that VR benefits from, where if you walk very slowly, if you're crouched, your teammates, you're listening for where the other 4 players are on the map. And if, like a Rainbow Six or a Counter-Strike, you get familiar with the map, then you start to develop some shorthand for where these locations are. But it's fun from the start. I mean, in terms of tactical shooting, it just gives you that feeling of you got to be ready to engage in these firefights. There's, of course, things to unlock, new weapons, new classes, new skins, new special abilities. It really is, just like Counter-Strike, a very simple game, but maximizing the advantages of a strong community that's developed out of it and being able to play with people. If it was just single player, if it wasn't populated, it wouldn't be a recommendation, but because there are constantly people on the servers filling it out, and a pretty welcome community as well, I think.
Well, my fear was that it wouldn't be, because I am not necessarily going to be as good as the person who's been playing for days at a time now. But not only was I okay enough to play, the people that we played with were perfectly helpful. Like, they were offering advice while we played. And
you can feel useful even when you die, because
you can
jump into a third-person camera mode also, that you can then start communicating, letting people know where the other people are on the map. And so communication becomes key in this. And that presence of looking around and seeing down an alleyway, out a window, or where your teammates are in the map, all feeds into that visceral feeling of being in this tactical shooter. That's Firewall 0 Hour. I hope there's going to be more maps, more expansions to come out of that, and really proof that even on PSVR, the track controller means so much.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the gamepad controller?
Yes.
Because not everyone has that PS Aim.
You can also play it with DualShock.
And you can aim by doing this, which is an interesting thing. So you're actually snap turning still with one stick, and you're strafing essentially with the other stick, but your actual physical aiming and looking around the space is still done with a 6-off experience, which is, I think that's a smart idea.
And they do some tricks with the IK because you're wearing a headset, so you're not really pressing your face against the virtual stock.
You said you checked a Thingiverse for a 3D printable stock because you would like that.
I would like to be able to press the PSM against my shoulder to steady my aim. But once you bring it close enough, you see that red dot sight, and it becomes like that focus. I don't care if it's not as high resolution as the highest end VR headsets. It's still good enough that I can still make out those pixels in the distance and feel like I'm engaged. Firewall 0 Hour, been out for a while, definitely worth checking out.
First-rate wet work, team. Contract fulfilled. I've activated your payments. Buy yourself something nice. From me.
And once again, we'll wrap up this episode with an interview that you did at Oculus Connect 5, this time with the developers of Vox Machinae.
Yep, the mech game that we've mentioned a couple times so far, it's out now. It's out in early access. So I know a lot of people are now able to play it, and I got the chance to stand up with one of the developers and find out about their very long 4-year development process leading up to this release. Hey, we're here at Oculus Connect 5, and I get to talk to Jacob from Space Bullet, all the way from Vancouver.
That's correct.
You guys make Vox Machinae, which just went public today.
Indeed.
Right?
Well, yesterday.
Yesterday.
Actually. Yeah.
It is now yesterday. Yes.
Yes. We're out on early access. Very, very exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So you've seen the downloads already start to come in.
Yes. We've been cribbing the numbers. We've been looking. We've been counting. It's doing really well.
That's great.
It's actually very positive reviews. Currently 100% on Steam and 4.9, I believe, on Oculus Store. So
Let's lock it in at 100%.
Good numbers. Yeah. Good numbers so far. Yeah.
So let's talk about the game a little bit.
Sure.
You've been developing it for how long now?
I think it's about 4.5 years.
Yeah, a serious
Yeah.
commitment.
Oh yeah.
Small team though.
Tiny team. There's actually just 3 of us working on the project. We do also have a musician contracted with us. So
Okay.
tiny team nonetheless. Yeah.
Right, and when we played it last week, and we talked about it in our episode this week, it's a mech. I know you don't call them mechs, but it is a mech
We call them grinders
style game.
But yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely.
And the balance of sim versus arcade reminds me a lot of Mech Warrior 2, where it really is. It feels real, right?
Yes.
Like I feel like I'm in a mech and it's lumbering around the world, and I'm using the controls precisely and sparingly and tactfully.
That's right.
So tell me about the design decision. Was that always the direction, or did you just find yourself there?
Yeah, we've always wanted to make something that was very tactical, very tactile, and actually VR was the perfect sort of combination of that. When we started the project, we literally had a DK1 dropped on our laps, and basically from then on, we're like, we gotta make a VR game. At the time, there were no motion controls,
Right.
so we only got to that eventually, but that was always the plan, like to create the most kind of simulated experience possible.
So it was a gamepad game at first?
Initially, actually, it was keyboard and mouse, but then,
Right.
when CV1 was announced and ultimately got released as Rift,
Yep.
it was gamepad, so we adapted gamepad, and eventually that became motion controls with both Vive and Touch. So we've kind of been evolving along with the tech because of that long development, time. And so it was kind of interesting to have to add all those functionalities as we went. That was kind of the challenge as well, is just to try to get everything working and working well.
So tell me how you approached interface for this game. There's a lot of controls within the mech that I'm reaching around and using. Was that always the direction? And what are your restrictions? What restrictions have you put on yourself for what works and what doesn't?
Well, we've always wanted to make, again, as tactical and tactile as possible. So the idea there was to have everything within arm's reach, to be able to kind of feel like you're the operator. Our motto is be the pilot. So it's not about embodying the giant robot, it's about being inside the robot and feeling that sort of, experiential aspect to it. So
it's the ultimate cockpit game, isn't it?
Exactly. So going, from the beginning, we always wanted to emphasize that experience and make that as visceral as possible. Yeah.
One of my favorite controls is the jump jet. Can you describe how that works?
Just pull it up and pull it forward and punch her.
Pull it any direction, right?
Pull it any direction, that's right. We kind of use that mechanic to, in lieu of sidestepping or strafe. You can actually fly in any direction. So although the grinders themselves are very slow and lumbering, we use the jump jets as a way to offset that, to add sort of a very quick and nimble aspect, despite the fact that they're very large. So the better the player gets in using those controls, the more they realize that there's actually a very hyper and fast element to the game.
Part of the problem with being hyper and fast is that you get out in the open too quickly, and then people are taking pot shots at you.
Yes.
So tell me about how the damage model works, because I found myself getting hurt pretty quickly because I'm a run and gun player. It turns out the proper way to play this game is to take it slow, use cover, find a nice spot where you can shoot at the bad guys where they can't necessarily shoot back at you as easily. How does the damage model work though when you do get hit?
So basically we take the grinder and we have various levels of armament, and so as you get damaged you work closer and closer to the core, to the skeleton, and we actually show that quite physically and literally. When you see them get hit, we whittle away the armor and you can see that damage happening. We don't have any health bars, so the whole point is to try to make the health apparent of your enemy based on the visual feedback that
Do you
you
have
do get.
health packs? Can I fix myself?
Currently, we do not have such a thing in the game. We are definitely looking at different ways that in the future we can build that mechanic in as something that's very natural.
Right.
But because your average lifespan within the game right now is actually quite short, we feel that currently there's enough sort of quick turnover that having a healing mechanic potentially could actually slow things down even more.
So you're counting on players dying. You want them. That's part of the gameplay loop. Then you want them to get out there. And
Yeah, we do want to encourage
beat
kind
up
of
a little
quick.
bit.
Yeah, we do want to encourage a quicker loop, and that also encourages people to get in and out of the game as well, because we do support drop-in multiplayer.
How
so
many
we do
players?
Want up to 16 players multiplayer.
Wow.
So, and that's in a combination of any. You can have 2 teams, you can have 3 teams, 4 teams. You can do free-for-all, and all the gameplay modes are supported in all modes of team combinations.
And what are the gameplay modes?
So currently we have deathmatch, team deathmatch, and the 2 main modes we've been working very ferociously over the last 6 months on are called stockpile and salvage. So in stockpile, what we do is we scatter 5 different factories across the map, and we task the player with capturing and keeping those factories. Now, each factory that you take over gives you also a gameplay benefit. So, say you take over the coolant factory, now your heat dissipates quicker. So this gives your team a tactical advantage to maybe go after that first if, say, your team is outfitted with a whole bunch of lasers, which generate a lot of heat. So it's all about the type of tactical approach that you and your team take, depending on what kind of armaments and what kind of loadouts that you have.
Right. Okay. And you support bots, right? So
We do, yeah.
If I wanted to set up a co-op match with just me and my friends against the bots, that's a possibility?
That's totally doable. Yeah,
And-
you can actually play offline on a LAN game. You can play online,
Yeah.
and in the future, we obviously want to support more things like private matches. We don't have that yet, but
Okay.
as I said earlier, we're just entering early access right now. So
Right.
these are the types of things that we're going to want to add over time to facilitate different preferences.
How long do you anticipate being in early access?
Ooh, that's a good question. Currently, we've kind of earmarked kind of a 6 months to a year type of time frame, depending on
wow.
what the breadth
Yeah.
of features, and of course,
Yeah.
basing that on feedback from people. I mean, if there's a lot of bugs, we're going to have to emphasize fixing those bugs first. But if people are enjoying already the experience and they want to see some more stuff,
Yeah.
then certainly we're going to shift in that direction.
So the big news of the show obviously is Oculus Quest. I'm sure you had an opportunity to use it
Yes.
today. Have you had
Yes.
a chance prior to today to try it out?
Yeah, we did try it a little bit earlier in the week, and and our experiences are that it's a very nice device.
It's very exciting. So
Yes.
is that something that you're considering on your roadmap eventually? Do you
Well,
think-
I mean,
I've been told anyway that any Rift experience can be distilled down
Well,
to
yeah, I mean,
Oculus Quest.
ideally, yeah, you can just press a button and
Right.
it'll work. But I mean, the realistic answer is that Rift the PC is very powerful,
Yeah.
and a mobile device is a mobile device. So
Right.
you have to find a way to cram all those visuals without sacrificing on the core of the game, right? And I mean, not just visually, but experientially. If there's enough sacrifices made, then if that gameplay isn't quite there on that platform, then maybe that's a trade-off that's not worth making, right? So the candid answer is obviously we're interested in all platforms, but at the moment we just want to focus on making sure that the initial PC release is rock solid.
Well, with a dev team of 3 people, I don't blame you. I think you guys
Yeah.
have focused extremely well. The game looks really good.
Thank you.
The
Thank you very
graphics
much.
are top notch, and
Yeah, appreciate
the
it.
gameplay is a nice loop, as we talked about.
Yeah.
Well, good luck to you. Really, congratulations on entering early access,
you
and
so
we look
much.
forward to playing the game some more.
Yeah, cool. Appreciate it.